before, or who is a real beginner at meditation. Okay. Okay, so we'll sit together for half an hour or so. I will give a few basic meditation instructions if you need them. For those who have your own practice, you could feel free to continue with your practice the way that you understand it. If everyone's ready, we can get started. So, settle yourself into comfortable meditation posture. Make a point to say to yourself that this is the time for meditation. This is not the time for thinking, planning, worrying, or working things out. All those things I just mentioned have their place in life. Of course, you have to think about things, worry about things, and plan things. The art of the meditator is to be able to put it all down, to enter into that beautiful knowing space where the mind isn't picking up any subject of contemplation. You may put your attention onto your breathing as it runs through the center of the body. The breath is a good indicator for your state of mind. You try to be with each breath as it runs in, as it runs out. Settling the mind onto the breath in this way is using a meditation object. Whatever object you call into consciousness, your mind will take on that characteristic. Think of something that you dislike, that's agitated you, makes you unhappy. Your mind will become agitated and unhappy. Put your attention onto something that's beautiful, makes you happy. After some time, your mind will become happy, peaceful. So be careful what you put your attention onto in life. Where do you dwell with your attention? Your mind, your citta, your karma will take on that characteristic. The breath is a neutral object. It's not exciting, it's not dull, it's not happy, it's not sad. But it is quite peaceful. So we train attention to be able to sit with just the breath in mindful, clear awareness and presence. As you do so, thoughts and ideas will come into your mind. Things you need to do, you need to plan, you need to worry about, thoughts of your family, your relationships, your government, the weather, things you need to buy, things you need to get rid of. Thoughts will crowd in from different areas. You must be willing to put aside the thinking. When the thinking occurs, you note thinking. Interrupt that flow. Interrupt that story. Be willing to put that story down. Return to the neutral meditation object. Your ability to meditate depends for the most part on your ability to recognize thinking when it arises and to be able to interrupt that flow. And return the attention to mindful awareness, presence. Bring it into the body. For those with more experience with meditation, I point out that even a meditation object is just another object of perception. You're switching thoughts about this or that, or feelings of hot or cold, or sounds going on around you. You're switching those out for an artificial meditation object of perception. To really advance with meditation, you must give up this tendency to always be perceiving something, always be generating some kind of view, thought, feeling. The mind is not a receiver. The mind acts upon its environment. Any perceptions that come in is an action you're taking. Physical action, verbal action, or mental action. Holding the mind back from all objects of perception. Certain experiences can arise. You must have body awareness. Bring attention into the body. A feeling of brightness will arise, solidifying of attention, a feeling of being in possession of attention, not allowing attention to go out to anything. Now brightness will arise, a stillness will arise. Hanging on to that as your guide, then the rapture or beautiful energization will arise through the body. You can feel for yourself as attention leaks onto some object of perception and you start to lose yourself, lose your memory of yourself, lose recollection. And when you become recollected, attention returns inside the body, tightens and becomes purified. As always with meditation, start from where you are at. This mind, with this thought, with these feelings, this is where we begin. So ground your meditation in reality. If the mind is agitated, it will not purify, will not settle. You may need to introduce some method or technique for calming the agitation. If the mind becomes sleepy, you may need to introduce some technique to sharpen attention. If there's too much thinking, you may need to focus on interrupting the thinking. You are the only one who experiences your mind. You need to build your own practice, a dynamic practice that starts from where you are at. So we're going to sit together for another 15 minutes or so. So for the final few minutes of the meditation, turn your attention to the idea, thought and perception of loving kindness, metta, a universal loving kindness for all world beings. Bringing attention into the body from the level of the eyes. Feel yourself sitting here, radiating out from the center of your being. This beautiful well-wishing for all world beings. May all beings everywhere, in every state, be happy, be peaceful, be free from suffering. You may use the words, may I be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. May all beings be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. Or you may use visualization, radiating this beautiful light from the center of your being, like a cosmic Buddha, radiating, suffusing the whole universe. Or you may call to mind people or even pets to whom it's easy to arouse love. Catch onto that feeling and radiate it outwards. If it's difficult to arouse, then just pretend that you have that feeling. We call it up, welcome it, nourish it. The more often you call the feeling into mind, the easier it is for that feeling to arise in the future. So we take a few minutes to deliberately cultivate this beautiful citta, sobhana citta in the Pali. Sabhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso sabha buddha nubhavena satthaso ti bhavantu te Sabhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabadhamma nubhavena sattha-soti bhavantu te Sabhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabbhaso sabasangha nubhavena sattha-soti bhavantu te. So relax your posture. We're just in time. Last people have to sit at the front. We just finished the meditation. Okay, so welcome everybody. I want to check first that you all did your homework. You all looked up the story of Alexander and Diogenes? No? No? No.
All I read was, "Don't take away my sunshine."
Yes, that's the key line. Okay, this question. As a Buddhist monk and a Buddhist practitioner, one big part of our function is to withdraw from society and to practice. And then the question arises, is that kind of practice, is that really something holy or spiritual? Or is that just opting out and not getting engaged, not being willing to engage in life? One of my good friends, Dr. Will Yayan, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was always banging on at me about this. And he's always saying, you refuse to engage in life, you're just sitting in a monastery, that's not holy, you should be fully engaged and live life to the full. Yeah. He was 78 years old, he had a 25-year-old girlfriend. Actually a nice couple, strangely enough, they actually had a very nice relationship. So this was the question, and years ago when I ordained as a monk, I went to the monastery in Newcastle, northern England. And I was quite glad to finally get into the monastery. I'd gone and asked if I could go there for a year. And the abbot, Ajahn Manindo, said, no, you're too young, we're not having you here. I was 23. So I went back every 6 months and said, I really want to come and stay here for a year, practice, get to know Buddhism properly. No, you're way too young. And I was getting more and more desperate. I really couldn't hold down my job. I was kind of suicidal, depressive. I was having a hard time. And eventually I went back to the monastery and said, look, I don't care what you think, I'm moving here for a year. And he said, okay, I was just seeing if you were determined. I was determined all along, but I'm obedient too. I want to. So I did, I moved in. I was very happy when I moved in there. And so it was quite nice being up there on the hillside in Newcastle. I moved in the summer season, which was sensible. And having quite a nice time, a reasonable community, we meet every morning, etc., etc. I had a nice Dharma hall. And then it came up to one of the Thai or Buddhist ceremonies, big ceremonies. I think it was Magha Puja. Basically in Buddhism there are 4 big ceremonies spaced every 3 months. So the monasteries have a big function. And in Thailand, certainly the monastery is not just a place for monastics, for meditators, but is a community center everybody's supposed to get involved in. The whole town or village would come to the monastery for different events and things. So we were having this big ceremony in the place in Newcastle. And we were expecting about 200 visitors to come. We have to plan out the car park and draw out the lines where people can park. We have to plan out the food. That's the most important. And the kitchen and the activities and various different things. And it takes a bit of planning. And as we were all planning this out in the abbot's kuti, I think I probably rolled my eyes and expressed a feeling of, we come here to meditate and we have to do all this work. And for people to come and it gets all busy, this was supposed to be quiet and meditating. And then the abbot let me have it with both barrels. And said, that's not what we are supposed to be doing. That's just chilling out in the monastery. That's just relaxing. we are supposed to be engaged with the community that comes and supports the temple. We have a role for them, just as they have a role to support us. We have a role to support them. And he really unleashed on me for a good 5-10 minutes. And as I shrank into the corner, I felt smaller and smaller. But I took his point. Later on, I learned about this idea in all religions. And the idea is called quietism. And you can look this up on Wikipedia. It's actually Wikipedia is good for some things. And it does go through this idea of quietism in different religions, different contemplative sides to religion. And the basic premise is that it is not something holy to simply withdraw and not be engaged. That's making yourself quiet. And that may feel holy. But in actual fact, all you're doing is refusing to engage and making yourself peaceful. And especially in a monastic situation, your peace is coming not from your practice, but from your environment. If the building that you're in and the people that you're with is fairly peaceful, then it might feel holy, but it's just an environment that you've put yourself in. Now, maybe you need to put yourself in that environment. When I got to Newcastle in the monastery, personally I was very happy. I'd been working in a jazz club, so we have live music on at night. It's not really a good environment for a meditator. We would work 12-hour shifts. I had to be there. I was the pseudo manager. It's a terrible manager. And I had to be there a couple of hours early just to make sure everything's set up before the staff come in. I mean, it really consumed your life and social life. We'd have a lot of fun after the end of it. But it's all drinking and live music and running around. And so I really wanted to get into the monastery, to be in a place that was quiet. Everybody was in bed before 9 p.m. It was fantastic. And it's quite quiet up on the hill. I wasn't too keen on getting up early in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning, the bell would go. Or 3:30 if you get the job as the bell ringer. It's very cold and windy up there as well. It's not pleasant, but I was quite happy. Just going along, we do the chanting in the morning, and then we have an hour of meditation. We have a half an hour of chores. We have breakfast together. Get plenty of time off to read books, go for walks. Am I being holy? Or am I just putting myself into a quiet, disengaged situation, which then calms the mind down? What you find is, by the way, if you do put yourself into such a situation, you find that you still carry the same things with you. That most of the world really does arise from your internal situation, not your external situation. So at that time I'd spent my youth and my childhood in various depressed states. I was a depressive. I always have been by my nature. The same way you have a sober alcoholic, I am a happy depressive. And then, even though the situation and the surrounding in the monastery there was quite nice, and I really liked it, after a while this unpleasant nature of my mind would just arouse itself again. I started getting very annoyed and angry at the people around me and frustrated with them, as you do in any group of people you put together. Group of people, strangers, all have to live and work together. After a while, yeah, that guy. Then you always think you know better than the abbot, like the monastery should be run this way and this way. Until that day when you find that yourself is in charge, and then you're like, wait a minute. I just had a lot of opinions, it didn't actually help. So that idea of simply quietening the mind down, which is what a lot of meditators do. Try to take some time every day to sit and meditate, disengage and be quiet. That is a useful practice. But its usefulness only goes so far. After a while, you see, yes, it's just simply disengaging, especially if you do it long term or in life, isn't actually going to give you any true spiritual qualities. This is not spiritual progress. This is a disengagement. And the same can happen when people retire. There's an interesting book called The Longevity Project, a series of psychologists who followed people for, the initial study was for 80 years. So they tested young kids, 4, 5, 6 years old, tested for a whole range of different psychological traits, environmental traits, family circumstances, socio-economic circumstances. Tested everything that they, scattergun effect, tested everything that they can, and then they followed these people through life and see who lives long and who lives healthy. It's not quite the same thing, almost the same. They found some interesting things in the longevity project. Socioeconomic background had a big effect. Your genes have a big effect. What kind of stock that you're coming from. More than psychologists want to admit, because psychology doesn't like genetics. Psychologists want to make everything about the psyche, because then you pay them money to fix it. They don't like the idea that maybe some things are actually baked into your character, which unfortunately they are to a large degree. Some things had a good effect, some things had a bad effect. A couple of things that had a good effect. If you worked, you live longer, happier and healthier, even if you're not doing a job that you enjoy. And a lot of these people were studied post-war, and they were going into jobs post-war that they weren't particularly interested in. The idea of doing something that you love wasn't around. The idea was, let's get a job and try and build a house and support my family in the way that my parents weren't able to do because of the war. That's World War II. Some people are a bit young, they wonder which war we're talking about here. The war on fly tipping in Newcastle, Durham County Council. So having a job, even if it wasn't something that you do, having some stress was helpful, so long as it isn't excessive stress. One of the key factors for living long and healthy was, do you have influence over other people? Or are you important in some way to other people? That was a big boost, really big boost. And one of the professions that live long and healthy was actually orchestral conductors. Now, I don't think they have any influence over anybody, but they think that they do. When they're waving their stick, they're really thinking they're creating music by the thing. Well, they're at the forefront. They feel they seem to have an influence. They also have a very good workout. It's quite a physical job. Abbots were ranked highly, and I've noticed this in Thailand because the senior Sangha council, senior monks in Thailand, all gain their position through being there for a long time, not through ability. Usually, the key quality is a steady hand on the tiller. So if they play the game, they look after everybody, they don't cause any controversy, and they're reasonably bright, often they will end up in these high positions. Not that you get to do much in the high position. So sometimes you get these old monks, and they get up to 75, maybe even 80 years old, and they're basically on their way out. And so you give them a bit of a promotion thing, you know, last couple of years of your life, we'll make you a high-ranking monk. And what seems to happen is then when they get that rank, they suddenly like spruce up and they get a second wind and they start to get more active. Honestly, this happens quite a lot. And if we relate it to the longevity study, that would mean that it's because you have that role and that function of being important to other people. and engagement with society. So disengagement with society isn't helpful. More things from the longevity study, some things that were highly damaging to you in terms of longevity and health. One was a myth that they exploded, that being married, does it help or hinder you? What do you think? Do you live longer and healthier if you're married or not married? Married. Turns out being married doesn't help you live longer or healthier, but getting divorced will cut years off your life. So staying married will help you. But if you get divorced, especially, and almost entirely, in fact, according to this study, was if you're male and you get divorced, you have a very high chance of dying within the next 5 years. Women tended to be a lot better, according to this one study, which has now been going on 120 years, I think, 110 years. Women fared a lot better, actually, with divorce. They seem to be more capable of having a role and a function. Maybe men are less engaged if their wives don't make them engaged. I don't know. I've never been married, never really had any kind of relationship, so I'll leave that up to you to guess. Also, retiring. Oh, by the way, getting divorced made men more likely to die. They had a higher mortality rate. But if they got past 5 years, their mortality rate would return to normal. So it seems to be a crunch period. The same for retirees. When you retire, you have a very high mortality rate, that you're quite likely to die in the couple of years after you retire. Again, if you make it past 5 years, after having retired, then your chances return to normal again, according to the study. Again, studies, schmuddies, you know. You have to take these things a little bit carefully. So that aspect of retiring when suddenly you don't have a role anymore seems to affect the person quite deeply, quite strongly. One would imagine those retirees who remain engaged, to get involved in hobbies, be it gardening or social clubs or whatever, then one would assume that they are the ones that are more likely to survive. People surviving cancer were also similarly more likely to have a 5-year survival rate if they were engaged in society. Some caveats with that. There was a separate study that said that if you engaged in group therapy with a psychologist, when you do chemotherapy, you're more likely to survive for 5 years. 5 years, for some reason, is the survival rate that they all go by. And, of course, I'm a psychologist by degree. I have a degree in psychology. So psychologists love this, of course, because it puts all the power into their fantastic therapy. Turned out, actually, that study was specifically done with women with breast cancer. So it wasn't cancer. It was a specific form of cancer with a specific age group and a particular gender. But what it was, follow-up studies showed that it wasn't the therapy that increased your chances of life. It was being in that social group meant you were more likely to take your medicines. And chemotherapy, I guess it's a lot better these days, but in the days when the study was taken, was quite difficult to take and would make you sick. So a lot of people would not do it or would stop early. But if you're in a group, you're more likely to take all of your medicines. So I'm raising this up to point out that a disengagement with society is not necessarily a good thing. And yet this is what certainly Buddhism kind of recommends. As monks and nuns, we disengage a lot. And it can feel then more like, I've seen this a lot, especially with young people or people who come new to the monastery. They really want to just disappear into their hut and not engage with anybody, because it feels kind of holy, feels kind of peaceful. It is kind of peaceful, but it's the wrong kind of peace. If you're not engaged and you're not working and you're not making an effort, your psyche kind of just slumps down, and I've seen this a lot. Most of the people that stay in monasteries are not the meditators. They're the people that get engaged in the society functions of the monastery. Have you all seen that? People keep sending it to me for some reason, but another study that was done on Mousetopia. Have you seen this? One or two people now? Look up Mouse Utopia. I'm not joking, it's a thing. Basically, the psychologists, again, put a bunch of mice into an enclosure and gave the mice, or rats I think it was, food. So they don't have to do anything for their food. They just get, every day, food gets delivered into the enclosure. So they have nothing to do. They have nothing to engage with. They had some things, some toys and things. And basically, the mice became totally disengaged. You got like a priestly class of mice that refused to do anything. And the lifespans of the mice dropped dramatically because they didn't have to work at anything. They didn't have to do anything. So this idea of disengaging with society is a false dawn of spiritual progress. You may need to do it. It is a really beautiful thing to do, if you get opportunities to disengage and go and really concentrate on your meditation for a period of years. But ultimately, is that really going to be satisfying? Some of you may know, I shouldn't say the name, should I? A person who used to live in Bangkok. He's a Westerner, he owned a business here. And I went to his place. I was friends with him and his wife. I knew his wife actually more than I knew him. And she invited me over for lunch one day, and I went. And he said to me, you know, I'd dearly love to become a monk. He said, I'd love to just do that, to go off and focus on my practice. He said, but unfortunately, I love her too much. Now, this lady was extremely beautiful, so you can kind of see his thought and his feelings. Anyway, about 3, 4, 5 years later, I wasn't counting, but he and his wife split up. So I called him up, so you're ready to come to the monastery now, are you? He said, no, I have a new girlfriend. Also extremely beautiful, and they have a child together now, and they're living in another country. Some of you may know who I'm talking about. So yes, the idea of going and being holy, withdrawing into a monastery and disengaging it may be attractive, but ultimately as human beings we need a job, we need to get engaged, we need to work. So this was encapsulated in the story of Alexander and Diogenes. Now I asked Grok, how do you pronounce Diogenes? And apparently the Anglification of the word is Diogenes, but the original Greek was Diogenes, because the G is a G, not a J in the original Greek. So let's put that aside and say Diogenes, because I'm sure there's somebody here who's going, yeah, actually it's Diogenes. It's bound to be someone thinking that. So the story goes, the original story goes, as we have it, that Alexander the Great, having conquered what he thought was the world, of course, there's a lot more world beyond where he went, but he thought he'd conquered the world. And he comes back to Greece and he meets up with this philosopher called Diogenes. And Diogenes was a skeptic, which is a specific school of philosophy, or developed into a specific school of philosophy. It actually developed into Stoicism. Now, don't get me, I didn't do a philosophy major, so don't get me too much. And if you know about it, that you can tell us what you know about it. The story goes that Alexander the Great went to Diogenes, and he'd heard about this guy who was a street philosopher who lived just on the streets. He lived in a urn or in a vase. Wikipedia says a barrel, but apparently there were no barrels. Barrels hadn't been invented, so it was actually an urn. A lot of these kind of stories go around. So apparently it was in some kind of big urn that he used to live. Or a barrel if you prefer, I don't care, who cares. And he was an extreme renunciate. He would go barefoot, as monks go barefoot. He would beg for his food, as monks beg for their food. Apparently he had a gourd, a water bottle. It's one of his few possessions. And then one day he saw a kid scoop up water and drink it from his hands. So he chided himself as living a life of luxury with a gourd, and he threw it away because he should use his hands. Not so much like monks. And Alexander came to him, and a lot of different accounts of what he said, but one of the things that he may have said was, I am the ruler of the world, what is it that I can give to you? And Diogenes said, you can get out of my light. So goes the story. This story got repeated by, we don't know the original story, but it got repeated by a lot of Greek philosophers, Rome philosophers, Cicero wrote about it, and then somehow it passed into Anglo-Saxon mythology, and each writer is kind of filled in details according to how they want to present the story. Apparently Alexander was very impressed because he said that of all these great things that I own and I possess, how come is it you only want the one thing that's right in your present moment experience? So this kind of demonstrates or captures the idea of mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is bringing your mind back into the present moment. The thing that's important is the thing that's happening right here, right now. And bringing the mind, withdrawing the mind back from all these amazing things, businesses you can set up, governments you can set up. I have a curious relation to politics, especially American politics, because as a foreigner we're kind of like, huh? 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 But it's not much better in Britain or Thailand, to be honest. I also follow tech. I've been following Elon Musk's Starship project, which is quite incredible, what he's trying to accomplish with the Starship. This is the rocket ship that he hasn't got working yet. But as a mindfulness meditator, our training is to bring attention into the present moment. Famous poem or statement of the Buddha is, the past is gone, the future, you don't know what it is. The present is here and now. Bring your mind into the present moment because you don't know when death is going to strike you. Or, as Kung Fu Panda said, if I can remember the thing, forget about the past because it hasn't arisen yet. Forget about the past because it's over and done with. Forget about the future because you don't know what will happen. And forget about the present because I didn't get you one. Yeah. The Dharma of Kung Fu Panda, I think that's where it was. Does anyone remember? There's some cartoon that was on. So our practice as a mindfulness meditator is always to bring the attention into the present moment. This is where we learn. This is where we can completely change our perceptions. There are certain insights that arise from mindfulness meditation, and these are what we are practicing. If you carry this idea of mindfulness too far, then you get to the idea of quietism, simply withdrawing the mind. That's not holy. So with mindfulness meditation, what you should be doing is learning about the processes of your own body and mind, the way that you yourself are working. And when you watch with mindfulness, you start to change your opinions. There are a lot of things that you thought you enjoyed, but if you watch with mindfulness, you realize maybe I don't enjoy them. There are some things that you wouldn't enjoy, like the breath. When you practice it, I really like this. I really like just breathing. I like, what's it? It's called idling. There used to be a magazine called The Idler. It was a kind of humorous magazine, but this idea that you can just stop and idle, like an engine idling, right? Just ticking over. And I really like traveling because I don't like going to new places and having to engage with people and work out the bathrooms and things like that. Do you ever get that? You know, now that I need glasses, every time I go into a new bathroom, I can't figure out how to change the shower setting and things. And I end up just wishing I was back home. But I like the traveling. I like sitting on the plane or a bus or a train. I like just, because I like my own breath now. It took a lot of years for me to practice this. I like my own company. Again, that took years and years. I didn't know how to be by myself. I always sought company and friends and engagement and activity. But now I've learned. Is that learned through mindfulness, or is that just because I'm getting older? I've noticed this with people as they get older. You tend to like your own company. Is that true? More? Joe, you're pretty old. What? Yeah, just being with yourself. It's not that I think that I'm a great person or I'm going to change the world. It's just, everyone's leaving me alone right now. I used to call it the Stanley Laurel moment. You remember Laurel and Hardy? Some people have, like kids today. Some people I talk to, they've never seen Laurel and Hardy. Some young people. You've never seen Laurel and Hardy? She's going, like apologetically. I can't imagine what Laurel and Hardy would look like now to somebody who's never seen Laurel and Hardy. Two goofy characters, and they go around getting slapstick, 1930s slapstick comedy. It's dumb, stupid. It's Laurel and Hardy, right? But one of the things that Laurel, who was kind of the dummy of the couple, of the pair, but often he ended up being a little bit wiser. One of the things you notice in Laurel and Hardy is there's always things going wrong. They're getting whacked on the head by a hammer, or a ladder falls on them, or a piano falls on them, or something. There's always stuff going wrong. But every so often in Laurel and Hardy, you see this moment where Laurel is kind of looking around like, what's going to go wrong next? And then it'd be like, there's nothing bad actually whacking me on the head at this precise moment. And he would go like this, he'd go, people who are laughing know what he looked like as he did it, so. Huh?
It's a good imitation.
Good imitation, okay. That's not a compliment. But after I learned to meditate, I caught this Stanley Laurel moment, that if nothing bad is happening to me right now, my mind would just bring stuff and carry it with me. Have all these thoughts and ideas, and most specifically complaints. Because I'm British, we grumble about things. We don't really care. We don't want to fix anything. We don't want to do anything. But we want to grumble about the things we don't like. And this grumbling mind would just come up if nothing's happening. And it took a long time for me to learn that trick of mindfulness of, hey, everything's all right now. My breath is a nice place to be now that I've trained myself to be there. It's not just quietism. It's not just refusing to engage with the world. This is a beautiful place to be, my own company, my own breath. And right now, I found this in the dentist. I just had this tooth replaced here. I had a black tooth for a number of years, and I was contemplating the guy who wouldn't crown it because it's too jammed up, and I have to do Invisalign for 3 years, and it's 200,000 baht to straighten all my teeth. Nah, I don't care about black tooth. And this was all going on, and then flossing my teeth, and then the tooth just fell off, the whole thing. So fortunately, he said the root was salvable, and he put this zirconia tooth on now. He had to cement a post in and then take another print. But I noticed in the dentist, as you're sitting there and he's doing all these unpleasant things in your mouth. Fortunately, the root died years ago. It wasn't painful, but it's not pleasant. And being in the dentist, I can be like, the whole time. And then I realized, at this very moment, he's just mixing up a paste. Or he's just taking a print of my teeth. And at this actual moment, it's actually not bad. I learned that, I can just find those beautiful, mindful moments where attention returns to myself. But only because I've trained to do that. Now the question is then, is that withdrawing, bringing the mind back? At what point do you keep just being mindful and letting go? And at what point do you then engage? This is a thing that's been occurring in my own life, just briefly before I finish. In that from 2007, I came here to Banari. It looked very different to how it does now, but and I asked the owner, can I bring people in, do Dharma talks? And he gave me permission. He didn't charge money. We could do it all for free. And that was how this group arose, 2007. He was there. I think you were the only one. Was anyone else here the first year? Joe, you weren't around?
No, 2009.
9.
2 years later.
So my thought then was I'd had this curious episode with a Thai doctor. I don't know if some of you had experiences with doctors in Thailand, but he told me I had cancer, which I didn't have, but he said that I had lymphoma. I had nothing of the kind, but for a while I thought I was dying. I thought my number was up. And one of the things I thought was I didn't contribute anything in my life. So as this whole thing passed and I wasn't sick. I wasn't even sick, that was the funny thing. But I started the group here in 2007, and so I worked for 12, 13 years. I worked really hard on this group. I'd update their website 2 or 3 times a week. I had a calendar on, put other people's events on. I mean, I worked really hard at this. We'd have at least 2, sometimes 3 or 4 events a week. And then as COVID came, I was planning to move to Singapore. I was having to finish my degree, which meant going up to the university every day, so I kind of cancelled the group. And since then, I haven't done very much. COVID came, I stayed in my room. I liked staying in my room. I learned how to order food off Grab. Sort out a nice little comfort zone. So for the last 5 years, I've done very little. Rin here has been working hard, and others have been working hard to keep the group going, which is good. Bangkok should have a weekly meeting. But I have been noticing the last couple, 2, 3 years that, am I really getting holy? Or am I just chilling in my room a little too much? So this year I'm opening a meditation center in Rayong, which fills me with dread. And it's a long way out. It's difficult to get stuff and build stuff and put stuff together. And just setting up my room there costs like a huge amount of money. I have to buy all these things, to locks and hose pipes and clips and monitors and keyboards. And then there's the joys of dealing with a Thai abbot who has his own ideas of how to do things. which don't align with my ideas. And the whole thing is mayhem and fills me with a kind of dread. But you have to get engaged, right? You have to do something. And after 5 years of not being engaged, it was great for my meditation. My meditation improved dramatically. I now know things that I did not know before. I now know things that I taught for many years but didn't know the actual meaning of, that now I know through the meditation. But I'm getting to that point that I have to re-engage and set up this meditation center. So hopefully next year we'll be opening up for 10-day retreats. And then outside of retreat time, people can come. During the retreats, I'm planning to have good vegetarian food. Outside of the retreats, good luck. But I have a room for a kitchen. We're going to have to employ, or I want to employ somebody to come and make proper food. I don't want to do this slapdash Thai style, might be nice, you'll be right kind of thing. So that's what I'm working on. So final thing I wanted to mention, this idea of Diogenes and Alexander. There's one more part to that story where Diogenes personifies this idea of just bringing attention into the present moment. You're standing in my light, great man who could give me money, buildings and palaces and boats and take me to India. No, just get out of my light. Encapsulates this idea of mindfulness, the beautiful idea of mindfulness, that just here, right now, this stuff is enough. But there is one more thing, is the light that was being blocked. And this is important in meditation. It's not just damping down your feelings, not just about being mindful, not just letting go of things. People do this when they try and become monks, and they're like, I don't care. You bring me food, I'll have whatever food you're giving me. Accommodation, I can live with any accommodation. And people have this pious, fake holiness that they're just going to be holy, and then after a few weeks, of course, they start to implode. And I've seen this many, many times. I went through the same kind of experiences myself. Fortunately, I've been through them and know. But within the meditation, it's not just about calming down, being peaceful, being present, but about arousing the light. The sharpness in meditation is something that is really important. At some point, yes, you need to calm down, you need to let go, you need to disengage from your mind. But there comes a point, you can get into a fake samadhi, is called, fake concentration, where the mind becomes very peaceful, but it's blank. And this is called a fake concentration, because it's not real holiness. All you've done is practiced a form of quietism. If I just make my mind quiet and refuse to engage in anything, then my mind goes zzz. And you can tell yourself, I told myself for many years this was peaceful, this was samadhi, this was spiritual, and it really isn't. All you've done is you've exchanged one set of thoughts and feelings for another set of thoughts and feelings. There is a point where you disengage entirely from the process of perceiving things with the mind. Then this beautiful mind state starts to spontaneously arise because you're not engaging with anything. It's not just a disengagement and then a peacefulness. The citta, the mind, starts to coalesce within the body. It becomes sharper, it will give you a feeling of power, a feeling of brightness, not power over like ego or power over people, but a gathering of forces within you. This literally does appear as light within the body, within the meditation. This is the thing that starts to get sharpened. This is the thing that we are developing. This is the real, true, holy quality. And it has a series of consequences from it. So I want to stop there. And see who's done their homework. Did anybody look up Alexander and Diogenes? Do you have any thoughts about this idea of opting out. There was a video on YouTube about Japanese culture, and apparently Japanese youths, they are opting out of relationships. Apparently they remain virgins right the way through their 20s and 30s sometimes. Interesting. Opting out of alcohol, which surprised me, this tendency, even in Britain. Remember when I was 16, I couldn't wait to get into the pub. That was like life, that's where stuff happened and you met people. And now I see there is a strong tendency within the youth to not get engaged with alcohol. Now, it's probably a good thing not to be engaged in alcohol. But there's an opting out of trying to buy a house, maybe because houses is just too expensive now. Mass immigration, without expanding the number of houses, puts a price pressure. And certainly in Europe, the price of houses is beyond people's ability to pay. I was in Canada last year, and this was true there. I mean, Canada, the one thing that they have is space. So the government was trying to buy up farmland, rezone it as suburban house, suburban land, and then selling the plots at a vast profit. And people were complaining that you shouldn't be removing the farmers, and the government shouldn't be profiteering off reselling land by rezoning it. A lot of interesting discussions. But so this refusal to, in Japan, this study was, in sex, relationships, alcohol, hobbies, people had less and less hobbies, and hobbies that involved leaving your room were diminishing. I presume hobbies like playing stupid computer games are probably increasing. Less likely to buy property, less likely to buy a car, less likely to even learn to drive, which flabbergasted me. That was the day I was 17, I was begging to learn to drive. So this is the kind of opt-out culture. I read that in Thailand, 50% of women between 20 and 30 are single, which is quite a statistic for Thailand, where people used to come up, court, get married, and get engaged in society. A lot of males disengaging with society, disengaging with relationships. I'd have thought, from my experiences as a youth, like alcohol, driving, and girls, those were the three things you were desperate to engage with. So the fact that I see now people are disengaging with that is quite astonishing to me. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is another thing. I just get this feeling that the disengagement of youths from society and culture is more like quietism. It's just a disengagement out of fear or out of reliance on a welfare state to feed you, like the mouse utopia. Look that up, by the way, mouse utopia. It was an interesting experiment.
So it kind of sounds like all of your statistics and what you've mentioned are pointing to what the Buddha said to Ananda, which was that friendship was the whole of the holy life. And that interconnectivity, that opportunity seems to be, maybe that's where the opportunity to actually apply and practice comes from.
So in the longevity study, they included a lot of studies about happiness. And most of the studies on happiness come from self-reported happiness. So it's not whether you are happier, it's whether you say you're happier. So married people say they're happier, but we think that's because their wife is looking at them while they're filling out the questionnaire, like, oh, I'm very happy. Yes. So self-reported happiness, there are caveats with that, but two of the things that increased your tendency to self-report higher levels of happiness was being married, being engaged with religion, and being engaged with social groups. Now, there's a question that being engaged with religion, it didn't matter which religion. may be the same thing as social groups. It may be because you're socially engaging with people. But that made people report themselves as feeling happier, social engagement. As for the Buddha, he did say to Ananda, Ananda said to him, I think having good friends, spiritual companions is half of the holy life. He said, do not say this, do not say this. Spiritual companions are the whole of the holy life. But he also said this for about 50 different things. So Ananda said, I think loving kindness is half the holy life. Do not say this, it's the entirety of the holy life. And they went on for about 50 different qualities. So it's kind of the way the sutras work. Yeah. Having the right friends makes such a difference to your life.
I think there's been a shift certainly in the West through the influence of Thich Nhat Hanh and his emphasis on engaged Buddhism, that you're not in the monastery to escape from life, you're in the monastery to try to live a life of service. And that spread a lot. Here in Bangkok, we have Ajahn Sulak's International Network of Engaged Buddhism. They travel all over Asia to spread that idea of working for, helping poor people, working for peace, working for justice, and so on. And we had a visit about a year ago from Venerable Napan from the Golden Mount Temple here in Bangkok, and they're involved with things like programs for disabled children, interfaith programs, things like that. So they don't see being a monk or a nun as removing yourself from society. It's just the opposite. We have that same tradition in the Jewish religion that's gained more and more momentum in the last 50 or 100 years, that the most important thing is not praying and, how strictly you keep the food, the rules for food, but you should be out there helping poor people, helping the sick, working for peace and justice.
That is a very Christian idea, though. That idea of service and going out and helping. Before I became a monk, I went to Mother Teresa's monastery in Calcutta. And I met her, in fact. She put her hand on my head. In fact, somebody grabbed her hand and put her hand on my head. But even so, I thought I should feel a zap or something. I was like, it just felt like a hand. A bit disappointed. But in the Missionaries of Charity, which is what they do, is constantly work for people. But that wasn't my calling. And just working in society, that wasn't it either. Like there is a spiritual goal that contemplative religions propose. There is a spiritual enlightenment, a thing that can be got to, that is deeper, further on the goal of the holy life, not just being nice to other people, helping other people. So somewhere there is a balance there. But you're right, in Thailand, the monasteries usually are quite highly engaged with society. My own temple does these blood donation. So every month we have teams come in and the whole local area comes and donates blood. They wouldn't take my blood for a long time because apparently I have mad cow disease. Somebody told me they're not, because if you're of a certain age from Britain, you are of a risk factor. I think like 4 people died of mad cow disease in the 1982 or something. I mean, it's just a nonsense thing. But I actually went because my friend, he took me to donate blood. He's donated blood like 90 times. He's very proud of it. And he has a book with little stars in and everything. And so he made me go, and then needles and hair. And when I got there, they said, "Oh no, you're British at that age. You can't." Yes. So yeah, Thai temples do engage a lot, and funnily enough, monasteries in Thailand are really not for meditators. Meditation and monasteries are not synonymous. Most of the people that live in the monastery like to live in the monastery and get engaged. On the other hand, the monastics do disengage from a lot of things. For example, I often stay here at night because if I go home and people see me going in at 9 p.m., people are going to, what's he doing out at night? I'm not supposed to do that. Now, if I have to, I have to. I'm not going to get fined or anything, but even taxi drivers, when I've been out here, they're like, why are you out here at this time at night? So we do disengage from a lot of society. We disengage from drinking and alcohol, disengage from, supposed to disengage from. Yes, you've all seen the newspapers recently. We're not going to go into that topic. There's a lot of things that we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to run, which is really frustrating when the bus is just there and like, if I can just run 15 minutes to the next bus, and like, no, I'm not allowed to. I'm supposed to walk dignified way. We disengage in the terms of clothes, shaving the hair. We disengage from a lot as a Thai monastic. But no, we do still have rules in society. It just depends. I mean, there's some ceremonies. There's a ceremony we do once a year when every monk in the monastery has to attend, which means there's still 10% who don't go. But and then every year, like I see these faces, I'm like, I've seen you last year. Like people that just show their face once a year in this one ceremony, and they must just stay in their room, or God knows what they do. So there is quite a few of monks like that. Mostly for Westerners, they come for meditation, and they want to withdraw, not to engage. So that's their interest.
Thank you for your talk. This made me think of something. I just wanted to share that. I know people go to the gym to be healthy, lift weights, cardio, blah blah blah, have a healthy body. But no one lives at the gym. That's just dumb. And it just made me think, meditation is something similar. You go to retreats, you practice to have a strong mind, to be present, to be mindful. But if that's all you do, that's kind of silly. Kind of defeats the purpose, especially if you're a lay person. So
it does. You're completely right. Up to a point, because you slump into this fake samadhi of quietism. However, there does come a point in practice where you catch the mind when it's not engaged with any active perceiving of things. And it starts to coalesce. And it becomes self-evident. Like this will lodge into your psyche and will not let you go. And at that point, you start to see that, okay, the final steps are going to be a total disengagement and going into my meditation. I see this because Ramana Maharshi, a very famous Indian guru, and he left his home when he was 14, and he traveled to a mountain. For some reason, it occurred to him, this mountain is where I have to spend my life. It's really more of a hill, but... and when he got there, he went into a monastery, and he went and sat in the cellar, and he just meditated the whole time. And the kids would throw stones at him, and the rats would come and gnaw at his legs. He had all these bad legs and marks and damage, serious damage. But no, he just wanted to meditate. And I often thought about that. Like, I wanted to be him. But when I tried, you can't do it, because your mind you're not ready for it. But now I know that there is a point where when you catch that thing, it's like, okay, now I know that that's how it's going to end. That's when you finally go into enlightenment. We'll take the total withdrawal. But you're stepping into something that's vaster and more beautiful and more powerful and so much more than everything you leave behind. And that's why at some point when you caught sight of it, this willingness starts to arise that's where you're going to go. Ramana Maharshi said it was like the inchworms around the mountain, Arunachala. They have these little worms, caterpillars, and they crawl along the leaves, and then they go up onto their hind legs and they twirl like a ballerina. and they're trying to catch another branch. And their idea is they want to get off their branch and onto another branch. So they'll twirl around, and if they catch one, then they'll let go of the hind leg. And they're quite fun to watch. I'd noticed them myself, and then I saw, he passed away, Ramana Maharshi, but I saw in the text, he said, it's like that you will not be willing to let go until you've seen the next thing down the line. When you have seen that, then you will be willing to let go of the whole world. So that really stuck in my mind a lot, because I wanted to be Ramana Maharshi, but was not ready for it. Still not ready for it, but I've seen it now, and I know what it is, and I know how it ends. Talking about ending, it's 8 o'clock. I will be here for a little while longer if anybody wants to stop and talk, but we will call an end to the session because we said it will end at 8, so we'll end at 8. Some of you booked appointments, dinner, food, I don't know. So,
Okay, thank you very much, Phra Pandit. And thank you all very much for being here and supporting each other on our path to that enlightenment that hopefully one day we will reach. If we are not yet there, then maybe you can come back next week because Phra Pandit will then give another talk. And then give you that final push to reach that point. And until that time, there's a few practicalities. Please help us cleaning up the room by moving the round chairs to the balcony. Careful not to turn over the Buddha. And the white chairs, they have to go behind the curtain outside. Outside, you'll also find 2 donation boxes on the table. One, if you want to thank Phra Pandit, you can put the money in that one. And the other one, if you want to thank Baal-Marie for giving us this room for free, you can put some money in the other one. Thank you all very much, and hope to see you again next week. And perhaps Phra Pandit, you could close with the blessing.
Sabitiyo vivajantu sambharogo vinasatu mate bhavadvan tarayo sukhi dikayuko bhava abhiva tanasi lisani changvudha pachayino chataro dhamma vadanti ayuvano sukhang balang. So I'll see some of you next week, and then from next year I'm going to be in Rayong province a lot more, so I won't see you very much.
Some of us will be going to a nearby restaurant to continue the conversation, get to know each other. Everyone is welcome to join us. We'll meet at the foot of the stairs.
Hey. Visiting for...
I'm visiting for 2 months.
Yeah.
Some work to do and lots of trying to go through a spiritual path. I'm wondering if there's any place I can do some volunteer work on a regular basis. Maybe here, you connect with someone. I don't know if I have to watch dishes, sleep, or something to
Yeah,
support.
yeah, I don't know. There was a monastery, but they were called Siphoning Cash Out. It was an AIDS monastery, and they did a lot of really good work. But some people were siphoning cash out, which is a shame, and it got shut down. It is a shame because they were doing good work. Yeah, I don't know about that. Thailand's not really a place for that. Because usually, you know, there was a time when backpackers would come and do things, and then it turned out they were bad teachers, or they didn't know what they were doing. So most places now require certification, so you have to take any kind of volunteer work. Like things with orphanages. When I first came to Thailand, for example, I'd go to the prison and talk to the prisoners. And they'd give me a letter from the embassy, any qualifications you have to do a course.
I just had something more informal.
Yeah, of course.